Welcome to the 5th episode of Failure to Fracture, a series that highlights my 20-year struggle to play the hardest song I've ever encountered on the guitar, Fracture by King Crimson. Now, Robert Fripp, the guy who composed the song and played the guitar on it, writes in his online diary, "Fracture is impossible to play." Well, no wonder. I guess I've spent the last 20 years unnecessarily angering my wife with constant metronome ticks and endless atonal picking. 20 years of my life staring in a mirror, watching my hands, looking for the most minuscule extraneous movements to eliminate from my technique. 20 years! Losing hope in myself as a guitarist. I really could have used this insight 20 years ago, Robert. But maybe there's more to it and I'm just not understanding. So let's see what else he writes. It took a year to bring my practicing up to speed, as it were, and 4 months directly and specifically on Fracture. My wife had quite enough after a few weeks, so I had to lock the door to the cellar where I practice. That sounds familiar. To keep Fracture fit takes 80% of my time and attention, which is too much. And it's almost improper that a man of 70 should be doing the high wire every night, when there's a younger generation who might take it on. So what does it mean when Robert Fripp says Fracture is impossible to play? Well, clearly it's possible because he's recorded it on more than one occasion, and I've personally seen him play it live, so I know it's possible. And there are several recent live recordings of it, like on the Live in Vienna and Mexico City releases. So, what on earth is Robert talking about? Well, there's a collection of guitarcraft aphorisms that can shed some light on this. Now, if you're like me, you may not know what an aphorism is. I sure didn't. So I looked up this definition, which is on Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia, an aphorism is a concise, terse, laconic, and/or memorable expression of a general truth or principle, often passed down via tradition. Aphorisms are distinct from axioms. Aphorisms generally originate from experience and custom, whereas axioms are self-evident truths and therefore require no additional proof. In other words, these expressions may only mean something to someone who's pursued serious study in the ways of guitarcraft. Now, I don't include myself in that group because my formal study is really quite limited, but my mostly self-guided practice gives me a little bit of understanding. Most importantly, because I've failed so expertly and for so many years at playing Fracture, I think I have a little bit of special knowledge that gives me some insight into the aphorisms. So let's take a look at them. Begin with the possible and move gradually towards the impossible. Desperate doesn't mean hopeless. Hopeless doesn't mean impossible. Impossible doesn't mean unnecessary. Efficiency, as little as possible and as much as is necessary. One measure of possible and impossible is the probable. If we are able to describe the characteristics of the level to which we aspire, our aspiration becomes possible. It is not possible for the musician to play music, but it is possible for the musician to be played by music. Perfection is impossible, but I may choose to serve perfection. Sometimes the impossible is necessary. The artist is a bridge between the possible, the impossible, and the actual. The greater the seeming imperfection, the greater the possible transformation. The necessary is possible, the optional is expensive, the arbitrary is unlikely. We are asked to work honorably. Honorably equals what is possible plus 10%. Too hard equals 2 steps beyond hard rather than 1. When determination becomes grim determination, and when we lose a sense of ourselves. We do what is possible and allow space for the impossible to enter. All this to say, fracture is impossible. In the same way climbing Mount Everest is impossible, or eating the 72-ounce steak in 2 hours is impossible. Fracture is an etude. It's an athletic feat. I find it fun, engaging, meditative, meaningful, challenging, torturous, and worthwhile all at the same time. It's important to understand the distinction between impossible and possible. If I believe that fracture is truly impossible, then I'm going to fail miserably, because that's true for anything that's difficult. But if I believe fracture is incrementally possible, then I will have a different aim. I will always have the choice between torture and joy. Steve Ball shared the following story about his first college math teacher who said, "If a problem is too hard, no one will take it on. If a problem is too easy, no one will take it on." Aspiring to learn and play fracture is a too hard problem that only one with confidence, determination, and willingness to sacrifice all that is required can master the speed, precision, agility, mobility, tone, and endurance required. Now, unfortunately, Steve's story doesn't leave room for ignorant people like me who just didn't know what they were getting themselves into. But that's okay, because my view toward the impossibility of fracture has shifted over the years. In my youth, I was really driven by ego and a misguided sense of personal value. Either fracture was truly impossible to play, or I had to be a failure as a guitarist. Now that I'm older, I know a little bit better, and I'm driven by a means of knowing myself, discovering subtle flaws, and relating my hands to an instrument through the action of playing music. My 20-year effort toward playing fracture is a measure of my available will to master the piece. It was just this week that I identified new inefficiencies in my picking, because every time I pick up the guitar, I'm still learning something. So yes, fracture is impossible. This is by design. And it's designed to be a horrendously steep climb up a mountain that may only be scaled via persistent, focused, daily climbing, one small step at a time. The point is not to get to the top, because the top just goes into the clouds. The point is to just keep going up the mountain in small steps each day. For those looking to understand a little more about this, there's a new virtual training program available on Robert's sister's website, Fripp.com. Look for the Robert Fripp virtual training. You can learn more about craft, discipline, and mastery directly from speeches given by Robert. I haven't checked it out or anything, so I'm sure it's really cool, but let us know in the comments if you end up checking it out. I also suggest watching the documentary film Jiro Dreams of Sushi for some analogous lessons in the journey to fracture. I've watched this film several times and have even taken notes, like while watching it, on more than one occasion, because it's such an amazing film about mastery, repetition, and awareness. So finally, I want to thank all the people that have written to me in comments or emails about learning this piece. I can't believe how many people are climbing this mountain with me all over the world. And many have paid attention to what I've been doing over the years. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. There's plenty more content ready for this series. I just have to get to filming it. But if there's anything special that you'd like me to cover, any questions you want me to answer, or for me to ask someone else, in the guitar circle or something like that, just let me know, send me an email, or leave a comment.